All right, welcome back to Bigger Than the Hustle, the podcast where we challenge the idea that success is just about grinding harder. Today, we are talking about something every entrepreneur and high achiever runs into at some point, and that is the realization that the habits, skills, and mindset that got you to where you are today, they will not be enough to get you to the next level. I'm your host, Chris Benedict. I've built financial freedom and now live the life most entrepreneurs are chasing. I know firsthand the real goal isn't just making more money. It's about how to deal with a life and not being stuck in the day-to-day.
And I'm also your host, Heather Rose Boehme, a process architect and business coach who's still in the trenches, helping business owners break free from the chaos of running their companies so they can scale sustainably. If you feel like you're working harder than ever, but your business or your life just has hit a plateau, then this episode's for you. Because most people, whether it's weight loss or business, you get to a point where you hit a plateau and it sucks.
Ugh.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing is, I feel like when we get stuck, it feels like, oh my gosh, we're working so hard, or we worked so hard and now nothing is happening. I actually felt like that yesterday. I posted a video about it, right?
I did. I saw it. I watched it. I did.
Right? And so that's the thing, is a lot of the times you get to the point where like you had to overcome this point, you worked really hard, you did level up, but now you feel like you're just not going anywhere, and there's some good indicators that you've hit a growth ceiling.
Let's talk about those
things up. Yeah.
Sure.
So one of the ones is you are busier than ever, but you're not seeing results from that busyness, and you kind of feel like you want to put your head down and keep doing what worked before, but it's no longer moving the needle. You know, the stuck in the mud where your tires are spinning as hard as they can and it's just not making any difference. And then that feeling leads to an instinctual micromanagement where you're just like, well, you know what? Obviously, I'm working so hard. It must be that other people aren't. So you want to kind of breathe down everybody's necks, which nobody likes, and it's just this nasty cycle that keeps on going.
Yeah, when you get to the micromanaging is like, that's the lowest death knell. It is just, it's over. When you're micromanaging, you've just lost all control. Literally. It's funny. The funny is micromanagers probably think they're in more control, but at that point, really, they've lost all control.
I feel like too, people really, sometimes they don't notice when they're doing it. They don't think they're micromanaging. They think they're staying on top of people. Right? Have you ever had that moment where you're like, I got to stay on top of them, and then someone from the outside comes in and they're like, oh, would you like it if somebody stayed on top of you like that? Would that motivate you?
You got to be careful with that line of thinking, because that may have been exactly what they were going through. Like we were talking about Mel Robbins this morning. She's talking about in the let them theory, like, my prom, like I wanted so much for my kids' prom because I was really thinking about what was important for us. And by the way, I've been going through the same thing these last couple of years with my kids through high school and into early college, where I was like, and I finally had to step back and realize this is their prom. It's not mine, and it's never going to be the same because they're not living the same lives that we lived.
And that's the thing with like parenting and business, like, they are your babies. So it feels like I am responsible. And so as a good business owner, as a good parent, you do feel responsible for what happens in your baby's life.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a certain point in kids' lives and businesses' lives where you need to let them be able to operate themselves. And in a business, it means giving your employees the autonomy and the space to do what they need to do, and you need to take that freedom to actually look at yourself and say, okay, what am I doing?
That's it. That's exactly it. That's the point, is to get to the free time so that you can then stand back and really start to evaluate what you're doing. Because we call it the hamster wheel, and there's a reason it's called a hamster wheel. It's because you're running and running, but not getting anywhere. But it feels like busy work. It feels like, and by the way, there's a certain amount of life that's going to be hamster wheel just because that's the way life is. You will find it. Everyone who's going through in life will realize, like, big swaths of time will just be wake up, make breakfast, do your day, hug your kids, get them to school. Hopefully it just becomes that routine. So you can do all these outside external things, but that pattern is going to be there.
What do they say? You spend hundreds of hours of your life just pooping.
Oh my God. When you really put the math together, it's like how much time I spent in my life. You spent 2.5 years on the can. Like if you sat down today,
Yeah.
you could be there for the next 2.5 years and that would be a part of your life. Like that's why I know that sleep is important, but I don't want to sleep as long because I feel like you're sleeping your life away. And I'm like, Stephanie sleeps an extra 3 to 4 hours a day than I do. And I'm like, well, that's an extra 4 hours a day of life I get over 365 days. It adds up to weeks more of living. But it's okay, man. If sleep is what makes her happy, who am I to judge? Because I'm going to let her. I'm going to let her.
The thing. I feel like it's finding those things that are important to you, but also it's like if you're sitting on the toilet scrolling TikTok, did you need to be there that long?
Let me, yeah.
All the time. I'm like, did you need to be in there for 45 minutes, bro? Like,
I've been having, what the funny thing, thank you for saying that because I don't even get into 45-minute scrolls. Like sometimes I'll be on the, like I'll look at Facebook and I'll watch it for maybe like 5 minutes and I'll have this overwhelming guilt. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing wasting your time on this? Like, you got shit to get done. Let's go. But you know what? Let's talk about that. And that's because it's called the comfort. And I talk about that and why your past success is actually the problem. And I'm living embodiment of this. And I'd heard for years that whole, be careful if you set a goal too small because then you'll get there and realize it should have been much bigger. And I was like, well, I guess so. And then I reached my first major life goals in business and I realized, oh man, now I see what they're talking about. Like I really didn't think big enough for where we were going. But my mind back then, I don't think had the idea of where we were going to be anyway. So understand that the skills that helped you grow at first are not the ones that will help you scale. And a lot of those initial skills, Heather, you might agree, were probably survival skills. Mm-hmm. Doing everything in the business, everything. Like I literally have to learn how to do it all. And then finding those moments where you just get stuck in the hard work. But we know that hard work that gets you started will get you started, but it's the strategy and the delegation and leadership that get you beyond that. And I had to learn that all by rote. I didn't come up in a corporate world learning that structure, and then I could have taken it off and done it in my own business world, like I've seen a lot of people do as they enter their second life if they come out of corporate. I didn't have that. Everything I've learned, I've had to learn on my own, which has been very painful.
Well,
so
in the corporate world, though, you don't even start, like the average person doesn't start getting leadership training until they're in their 40s.
Whoa, so I'm right on schedule then.
You're on schedule, and that's the thing. It's so like we're not being taught this from the get. And I think what's scary about it is initially your success comes from being busy because you're hustling, you're running around, you're doing a bunch of things, you're putting your head down, you're putting the time in. But then it gets to a point where your success is no longer about being busy, but it's about targeted strategic time, and that looks a lot more like quiet.
Yeah.
Thinking, how should this go? Planning. And it feels wrong when you first start doing it.
It does. There's definitely going to be a guilt complex. And maybe not. Maybe some people are just, sociopaths or psychopaths. They just don't. And they don't see that. But I think for the majority of people who have some empathy for their fellow man, yeah, when I reached a point where I was semi-retired, and I want to explain what semi-retired means. It simply means that at that point, my needs were all met, bills are being paid, the business works without me, I only have to put all that time in, and now I can kind of breathe. That retirement means, okay, I'm retired from having to literally swing the axe every day just to get firewood. So knowing that, there were times when you were just like, you have this extra free time and you see how hard people work and you think, oh, I remember how much I used to hate people on the golf course when I worked hard. Like when I was digging ditches, I used to hate people on the golf course when I was a ditch digger.
Like, I'm watching you.
Oh, it's true.
Because I feel like we all hustle really hard and we're all striving for that. Yep. But I've heard time and time again that when you actually get it, it's like anticlimactic almost, and then it's like, what do I do? Like, right? Oh, absolutely. Listen, I'm shamed because, like I said, when I go back to 2009, Chris, when it hit the fan, and I got brought to my knees, and that was my phoenix rising from the ashes, time. That was the start. Like looking forward, if I would see this guy at 52, I would be like, what? Compared to where you are now. But when you get there, it's so anticlimactic. It really, really is. And then that's because you realize, because
what you really did was get a goal to meet your basic needs, but it's not really the goal that's going to fulfill you and fill your heart. And so if you don't adapt, or, if you don't adapt and realize that you're always in constant change, and if you don't adapt and change, you become the biggest bottleneck to your own success. And I'm I'm literally, Heather, in this call, being on this podcast, all started because of almost a year ago having to like really step forward and say, okay, where am I? This is me. That's the problem. And then I got back into, that's how we met at an event. And here we are now. And having a friend and a partner like you is like, we're going to strip those things away, Chris. We're not going to let you get away with this BS. So let me ask more about your story, Heather. So I know you've had to make some major mindset shifts to move past your own growth ceilings. And, we're in different phases of our professional life. So what was a time where you realized that you had to do something differently to keep moving forward?
So I think the biggest time for me was like after I had my second daughter. Basically, my default setting growing up, I have two of the hardest working parents that you could ever have. I grew up seeing work hard, do the right things, right? And for a while it worked, especially in the 90s. The 90s was like this magical time where money was basically free, I guess. Like
it felt like it, didn't it?
Right? But they were doing so well. And like I would love to instill in my children the work ethic that my parents instilled in me. But the problem is, as I'm seeing the results in my parents, is like my dad is still in a job that he hates. He still has to drive, an hour and a half to work every day. And it doesn't, I almost can't talk to him about this because I am on this big, like, work smarter, not harder. Like, I need to figure out something different because he's living proof that just working harder will not change it. And it's like you're running into a wall and the wall never gets any thinner. Like, there's no breakthroughs, right?
Right.
So I naturally followed my dad's pattern of just working harder. And I was sitting there on maternity leave with my second daughter, Amelia. And I was just like looking back and realizing like, okay, like you are a hard worker. That was the feedback I always got. You work so hard. You're a workhorse was something that people told me all the time. And I took pride in that. I was like, yes, I am the hardest worker. And the thing is, it wasn't getting me where I wanted to be. I was the hardest worker when I was in my project management role. That didn't work out. I was the hardest worker in my real estate career. It didn't get me where I wanted to go. Then I did all of the things for coaching that you were supposed to do. I was the hardest worker, right? I
Okay.
went to all the networking events. I did all the activity on the outside, right?
Okay.
So I was sitting there nursing her and I was like, you are working the hardest and it's still not getting you where to go. But the one thing I wasn't really working on was myself ever.
Yeah.
I was making the calls. I was being at the events. I was, talking to the people, but I wasn't internalizing any of it. I wasn't actually reading the personal development books, right?
Right.
I was skimming the books, getting the highlights and kind of regurgitating them out, but it was like surface level. And so that was my moment when I was like, okay, you have tried everything but the one thing that you've been resisting, which is internalizing this and changing who you are as a person. Because working harder is not going to get you to the next level because it capped me out so hard. I was like, hard ceiling.
Well, we all know, right? Even in the greatest movies, maybe you push the engines to 105, maybe 120%, but no one's pushing the engines to 300%, 1,000%. No, at some point the engine blows up.
Blows up, and that's the thing is, I had many blow ups. Like I got let go from the company got sold, and I got let go from the project management. I had a big fight with my team lead in real estate. Like, it was blowing up, but not epically. And I was so lucky because a lot of people turn to way different paths when they implode, right? They don't work on themselves and they start drinking or they start doing drugs and then they really hit rock bottom.
Yeah. And if I might say, because I want to make sure we clarify this, that we're not talking about hard work. There's a lot of jobs out there that are hard work. I'm not talking about that. I know people in the construction trades are super happy with their lives and they work hard. Or they do hard work, excuse me. We're talking about working hard, working harder than needed to get the results that you want.
Like
And
running yourself into the ground.
literally, and I would say this to you, Heather, like had I known you during, I might not have said this while you were nursing, because who am I going to make a grown woman cry?
Yeah.
But I'm like, if you'd come to me and said, I don't understand, I'm working so hard. I'm like, I would say the answer, which I know I heard from somewhere else, so I'm not making this up, but it's such a flippant answer. It's like, well, yeah, so does a dishwasher. You know, a dishwasher, a washing machine works hard. Okay, so great. What do you want? Like, lots of things work hard. That's a choice. And here's the thing that you have to understand about resistance. Okay, when you're at a slow speed, if I'm going 1 mile an hour walking, and then I go 2 miles an hour, I don't really feel much resistance. If I maybe walking, if I'm, let's say, in a car, if I'm driving 5 to 10 miles an hour, I'm not really feeling the resistance. I start to get to 30 to 40 and I'm starting to hear the wind, then you start to hit 60, 70, 80. Now you're feeling it. But what people don't understand is, like, to go faster at this point isn't simply a matter of adding more horsepower or more fuel, because the resistance that is hitting you. So the faster you go, the more the resistance, the more energy it takes to make a little teeny tiny incremental change. Right? So think about that. So you're like, well, if I just work harder. So what that means is that you're going to have to increase your output by X number of percent to achieve 0.1% more output.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
It's nuts.
At the time though, I was not super burnt out when I realized that, but I was like, where do I even start? And I think that's what stops people a lot of the time. They're like, oh, I don't need to change. Then something happens that makes them realize they need to change. And their natural instinct is to go full, what is it called? Like New Year's resolution moment.
Right.
Like, I have never worked out before, and now I'm going to work out every single day for an hour a day starting January 1st. And then
that'll work.
Fizzle out on it by like week 2, right? Everybody does, because screw that. It sucks. I don't like it. Oh, by the way, I haven't lost any weight yet. And so I looked at my pattern back then. And I was like, well, my natural instinct would be just put my head down.
Right.
And read every single personal development book that exists in the world, right? Absolutely unsustainable. I kind of did that with the first book. I burned through it because I wasn't doing anything. But thank goodness the first book I read was Slight Edge, which is basically like the pre-version of Atomic Habits.
Right.
For today's world. And it was basically talking about how teeny tiny changes compounding over time make a big difference. So instead of trying to read every personal development book in the world, I started with, I'm going to read 10 pages a day.
Yep.
And that started 2 years ago.
Yep.
And I feel like I'm just starting to, like, everything I read gives me a different direction to go in. And like it has started gaining momentum, but it's been 2 years and I'm making teeny tiny changes. So I'm not seeing like crazy results.
But that's it. And we've all been there. We've all been that's it. I'm going to go 180 on my life, and it's very difficult. And having grown and learned wisdom, I did bring in other habits like that. So like, I don't go crazy. Like, I know I need to walk the dog. My friend Fred walks 5 miles every morning. I'm like, I just need to do 1 loop minimum. Mm-hmm. So I gave myself minimums rather than like, I'll do this. I'll practice language for an hour every day. Okay, well, what if you just said, I'll practice for 10 minutes or even 5 minutes? So when I started putting that together, like I went to the Y this morning. Ooh, pat on my back. I don't care. I literally have a saying. I don't care if I'm only in there for 20 minutes. I don't even care if it's just 20. As long as you go, get some stretching and warm up, then that is a success. And that takes all that pressure off, right, Heather?
So I feel like we all have that kind of moment when we realize that mindset shift has happened. Yes. What was that moment for you?
Man, when you reach a certain level of freedom, and it's weird because it's like freedom is a lot less expensive than you realize if you live beneath your means. There were some mindset shifts. I really, really had to get out of this weird mindset that everybody around me who was what I perceived as more successful somehow were always busier than I was. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense, because if you're now you can be a busy person, have a lot of stuff on your calendar for the day, but I'm talking about busy meaning busy work, right? Like, oh, well, I've got to sit down and write 50 emails today. Well, that takes a lot of time, but if you have leverage and you can have someone help you with that, then that gives you that time freedom back. So from the staying busy part, hence the dishwasher working hard, it was the same thing. I realized that the only way to really get to the next level was I had to actually work less and start delegating more, which we're coming back to, right? Letting go of control and trusting the systems and the team. And I mean, that was a trial and error as well. And I would love to have Adriana Kapitanakis, my lead PM in Pennsylvania, on at some point, because she came from the diner industry, knew she wanted to get into real estate, and this was someone I was able to train up, but I'd never really known how to train anyone. But I took this person who had this desire to live a better life and to be more than they were. And I'm like, I can show you what I built, that I can help you do what I did. And the way that was able to work was because, thanks to my brother Michael, who worked with me in my company for 8 years in the beginning, was Mr. Protocol. And the protocol is the systems, and the systems then take away the thought. You don't have to ask. There's not do I press the green button or red button? We already know this is the question. It's already a green button. This is the question. It's already a red button. And that takes this pressure off. So when you train people, they don't have to wonder, like, well, will I have to worry about these? So, when I realized success making yourself less necessary, not more, like, I really, like, if you talk to Adriana, like, she's like what I would call like my upper echelon, like she will tell people, like, you don't want to talk to Chris. Like, if a client or a tenant calls and says, like, she's like, I want to talk to her. So, like, I'm telling you right now, you don't want to talk to him. Like, everything you're hearing from me is because this is what he's trained me on. I will get him on a call if you absolutely insist, but please understand, he is going to repeat, probably verbatim, exactly everything I've said, and now he will be annoyed. I mean, I don't think she says it that way, but it's true. Go ahead. What's that?
But he will be annoyed.
But I will be, yeah, because it's like, look, like if, could we do something? Say it's it's not that owners are ever doing some owners are, but when we work with clients, sometimes clients ask us to do things that they don't realize we can't do. Either it's a violation of fair housing, or it's just not legal, or it's just nothing we could do. We can't go taking all this extra money instead of running a credit report, all these little things. My point is, this is the protocol. This is what we do. The owner says, well, can you make an exception? And Adriana knows, no exceptions.
So you kind of strike me as more of the visionary type, the big vision, and, like, correct me if I'm wrong. But I work mostly with that type of person because visionaries tend to be really great at going out and getting buy-in on their big picture. But where they tend to stumble is that systems and operations, that consistency, the repeatability. I was talking to someone and I was like, oh, we've all had those leaders who talk a big game, but they don't have follow through. That's a good sign of a leader who doesn't have systems and processes. So was that systems and processes kind of always in the back of your mind, or did you need Michael to kind of help you shift into that?
No, so yes, but, well, Michael was just more because he didn't like, he saw what happened. Like, if we'd said, we're not going to work with these kinds of clients, and then some client that we shouldn't have worked with dangled a big carrot and said, work with me, by avoiding that protocol for chasing the money, then shit would blow up. In a year or two, we would not have that relationship with the client because we already knew this was not a good client fit. And then that would create more stress and work for him. So you started to learn, like, okay, like, these protocols are like the bumpers when you're bowling, right? Like, it keeps the ball in the lane. No matter what, we're going to win. We're going to win something. And but what you're absolutely hitting the nail on the head. From doing it all to leading the vision. And you are correct. And I am at that point right now as the leadership of going, holy crap, I really need to delegate or find the people who do this, because I really don't know how to scale and grow without a team of people.
Well, and that's, I think, people avoid creating a strategy to get to their vision.
Right.
Because in the back of their mind, in the croc brain, right, they
Yes.
think that if I create a strategy to my vision, I'm going to have to do all that. And I don't want to do all that. Right?
And
I
then
don't want to make customer service phone calls. I don't want to write SOPs. God, that just sounds awful. And so I think that's what stops a lot of people from really clarifying their vision and building out that strategy, because I wouldn't want to do all that either. It's not fun to do that stuff. Sometimes it's fun to build the vision, but if you shift it from I have to do it all to I can define this and then find the right people to execute these pieces. I don't have to build every individual piece of the house I'm designing.
right.
You have to hire the right builders. Somebody who's laying tile may not be great at framing out the house, and somebody who frames is probably not going to be able to lay the foundation. I need
True.
individuals to come in and do those pieces, but I need to build the vision of the house, because otherwise they don't know what they're building and it's just going to look crazy. And so I think that's huge.
It's huge, and then that's part of your step from leadership is teaching people how to think, not just what to do. And that the greatest thing you can do is invest in people. And the problem is there's only two things in this world that make money: people and money. And the thing is, money doesn't talk back, so there's a tendency to want to work more with money because it's easy. But you can't live in a vacuum. You sooner or later you need people. And I think for a long time I lone wolfed it. Even if I had a small pack, I think I lone wolfed it for a long time because I didn't want to have to rely on people. But now that I'm growing and I'm seeing the results and benefits of hey, if I help you achieve your goal, it actually will help me achieve mine. It's a win-win. And that's where I started allowing myself to step back and saying yes, more to the things that were good for me, and protecting my time and surrounding myself with people that were more in line with the success of my vision. Right. And that's tough because these people that you've been with your whole life, like they got you to where you are, but they may not be ready to move on to the next step with you. And I know it's the minivan story. I think you've probably heard the minivan. Like basically, sometimes people don't belong in the front seat of your van. That doesn't mean they can't be in the van with you. A van can have multiple rows, but when we're talking about people in that front seat with you, like that should be someone who's aligned. So what happens is you realize that you have to be more selective on everything, selective of who you're being around, selective of the things that you want to go after, because success isn't just about doing everything. It's about doing the right things, and doing the right things. Part of that is setting up your proper systems.
Well, and I think a huge part of that too, and it comes down to like one word that everybody hates.
Yes.
And it's boundaries.
Ooh, that's a good one, Heather.
Knowing when to say no and what's going to happen. Like if you can decide, this is how I'm going to handle things after I set and hold a boundary, everything gets easier. I was having a coaching call yesterday, and basically, there's part of the organization that needs to make phone calls to the customers, and then there's the admins that if they miss those phone calls, those strategy sessions, the admins then have to deal with the fallout, which is, oh my gosh, the person didn't call me. They were supposed to call me. Now I'm stressed out. What happened? When am I going to get on a phone with them? And that causes way more pain and suffering, when a boundary could be, if you're going to miss a meeting, you need to text the admin. And if you don't text the admin, and I was telling them, it will happen. Everyone's going to cross your boundaries. If your boundary is you must text me if you know you're going to miss a meeting, and they don't, what's going to happen? Because we need to make it uncomfortable or painful enough that they don't want to miss that text. They don't want to just accidentally miss a meeting, because whatever's going to happen afterward is going to be painful enough that they want to avoid that. And so that's where your boundaries come in. It's numero uno, deciding what is the boundary. What are you saying yes to that is taking away from your time and energy that could be spent better somewhere else? And number two is, what's going to happen when somebody does not respect that boundary? Because someone will always disrespect your boundary, and you have to know how you're going to handle that, and it makes it so much easier too.
Well, yeah, boy, I tell you, I was a man without a lot of boundaries for many years, and I don't think it's something you think about. I don't think you're like, yeah, I don't have any boundaries. I think it's just, especially if you're a people pleaser and you suffer from, especially for men, the nice guy syndrome. People have a tendency to be parasites. They want to feed off your energy because of your positivity and the light that you bring, but they really aren't, they're really not out for you. They're really out for them. So, but you feel like this is going to grow, but you have to realize that the people cross your back. And you're right. But a lot of it is it's just your own self boundaries. And it was, again, bringing back Mel Rahman, since I listened to her this morning. What was the one? She's like, if your kid forgets their lunch at school, then let them forget their lunch. Like, yeah, they're not going to starve to death, but the pain of forgetting that lunch.
Should be high enough that they don't do it again. And that's, I think, the thing is it's hard to hold a boundary when you don't even know what it is.
Heather,
And I find that a lot. It's like, oh, my employees will never stop calling me, whenever, and I'm so busy, but I have to stop and take these phone calls. I'm like, okay, have you told them when they are allowed to call you? What? What do you mean? Like, I have to get these calls. I'm like, well, yeah, you can't tell them don't ever call me because that's not
right.
reasonable. But have you set boundaries around your time? Have you said, okay, you know what? I understand you guys have questions, but I want you to save all your questions and A, try to find the answer yourself, like we talked about last time, and B, you can call me between 11 a.m. and 12 p.m. I'll never book an appointment because that will be my hour
Yep.
to answer all of your questions. That is a boundary. And if somebody crosses it, the natural consequence is I do not answer.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah. The early part of you wants to say, you can't call me after. I see people get all upset. Who's texting me at 11? I'm like, what does it matter? Put your phone on silent and ignore it till morning. Like, so what if they texted you? So what if it's 3 a.m. and you get a voicemail? What do you care? You should be asleep and your phone should be off. So what does it matter? Stop trying to control them. That's what I learned. I was like, oh, you can ask me all the questions you want in a nasty email, client, owners, tenants, whoever. I don't have to respond to it. Just because you ask it doesn't mean I'm obligated to respond to your nonsense
And it's
or
hard,
your
I think,
energy.
for some people, because like I am, if you look at my personality test, I am maxed out on responsiveness, which means if I get a text message,
Yeah.
every cell in my body needs to answer it. And so it's really hard for me, and I have to create my own system for dealing with that. Now, if I get a text message and I read it, I have to respond immediately because that's just who I am. So if I get a text from you and I'm not able to answer it, I will just leave it unread. Because
I agree with that. I like the leaving it unread. I know I don't have an iPhone, but I think there's some ways that's getting better now that all the systems can tell when somebody sees something doesn't. But you're right, and again, what we were talking about earlier, that when people get further off of your radar, you respond less to them. It's people showing you. If someone doesn't respond to you for 2 weeks, you don't respond to them for 2 weeks, that just shows where that relationship is. Stop trying to fight that. That's just what it is. So I agree with you. I do try to respond, not because I want to stop everything I'm doing, but more because if I'm responding quickly to you, it just means I care. Like if you're texting me, I'm happy to hear from you. But I'd rather leave it unread. You're right. If I'm not going to get to it till the next day or something like
yeah,
that.
because I'll forget about it. If I ever read something while I'm busy and I just cannot answer
Yeah.
and I don't respond, it's because I read your text message and I just, for some reason, got distracted or wasn't able to respond in that moment. Anyway, we're getting off topic.
I know we're off topic. So let's get back to these final mindset shifts to unlock the next level. Go ahead.
Real quick, recapping. We've
Yes.
got shift your mindset from doing it all to leading with vision and
That's
finding
right.
people who are going to do the things. If you dread doing it, find somebody else to do it for you. So find somebody who will not dread doing it. And then shift from saying yes to everything to deciding what your boundaries are and protecting your time so that that time can be used for your highest and best stuff, for the strategy, for creating that vision. And then the last one that we never got to because we got too distracted was shifting from the amount of effort I do equals how much success I'm going to have, because that tops out at a certain level, to the amount of leverage I have drives how successful I'm going to be. because the highest successful people, find your favorite person, whoever you want to be one day. Because like Mel Robbins is one of my role models. I'm like, I would love to be Mel Robbins level. And she has an entire team around her. She has employees, she has staff doing things that she is not good at.
Or also, it's not just a matter of not good at it. It's just also a matter of effort. That's that leverage. Leverage is really the true success. And leverage is not about using people. It's it's finding people that want to share in your vision and your dream. Because you're right, not everybody, we like to think everybody wants to be in the leadership role. I think everybody wants some sort of leadership in their life, but no, most people, the 80-20 rule, 20% of the people want to be the leaders, 80% of the people want to be a part of the team. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with being a team member. I think, there's nothing wrong. I just don't like the idea of using people, and people aren't just pawns in your game. So it does hurt when businesses have to do mass layoffs, but at the same point, there's times when if there aren't mass layoffs, that could mean it could harm the entire company. So anyway, the reality is leverage. Every company, every person, nobody got there. Like Zuckerberg did not build Facebook alone. He might have worked his ass off in the beginning, but every day another coder was added to the team. And that's how it really grew. So working harder doesn't always mean working smarter. The real issues as a business growth, if you don't want to fall back into the self-employment model as a solopreneur, is that you need to learn to delegate, automate, and eliminate today what will free up your time so you can make bigger moves. And it's going to seem like it's impossible, or that must be easy for you to say, but the reality is you have to do it. Period.
And I think
Period. You got to fire yourself, they say.
If you're listening to this, and
Yes.
like one of the biggest blockers in my life is generally like, I don't even know where to start with this, because it's a big take on. If you're in the trenches working on everything and you're like, oh, so they're just telling me to work less, right? That's easy for you to say.
You're right.
Say, now is the time to start doing the smallest thing. And if it's a totally alien concept to you, the smallest thing is probably learning more about it. So I would start listening to books or listening to content from who you want to be, who is doing what you want to do at the highest level. Find their podcast, find their website, find their book, find somebody who has written or is talking about this, because the secrets to success are in their stories. And it may be that you just need to find the story that you resonate with so you can start doing a little bit. But that's the tiniest thing. It's just go find somebody who's done something you want to do and figure out what they did, because it's already been done.
I love that. So listen, final thoughts as we wrap up. The habits and mindset that got you this far won't get you to the next level. And boy, is that true. So unless you're willing to adapt and let go. And this is the truth. And that's okay. For some people, by the way, they're going to be okay with that. The messages that were out there, Heather and I are sharing, is information for people who want to hear this, who are looking to change their life. So let's talk about a quick recap on some of the things we talked about. Okay. Most people hit a growth ceiling because working harder stops working. Mm-hmm. We all need our own personal wake-up calls, right? What we had to unlearn to break through. So think about that. Resonate. Things that you are looking at. Ask yourself, what are you doing to prevent you from getting to the next step? And it could be something, as Heather said, very small. What are the smallest things? It could be something as simple as hiring an answering service to take your calls so that you're not constantly listening to voicemails. But the three key the three key mindset shifts. Say that 3 times in a row real fast. 3 key mindset shifts. Okay. You have to go from 1, doing it all, to leading with vision. And I think that's a huge one, because people want to follow a vision. They want to know where they're going. And you need to go from saying yes to protecting your time. And boy, I got to tell you, this one is probably the most valuable nugget, because your time is all you've got, and people will use it if they can. And the third part is to go from effort equals success to really understanding that leverage equals success, because the hardest workers aren't necessarily the ones winning the race. And if you look, you will see that. So, Heather, what else do you have for us to wrap up today?
So, as we wrap up, I would say if you want to take action on this and you want to start making this shift, I'm gonna say something different than I have written on our little script here.
Okay.
I would say if you're finding yourself at that plateau and at that ceiling and you're frustrated and you don't know where to start, or even if you know where to start but it's just not clicking for you, go find two or three people who are doing what you wish you could be doing, even if it's totally different from the industry you're in or the situation you're in. Go find them and chat GPT their history. If they're big enough for you to find them on the internet, they are big enough to have a footprint digitally, and ChatGPT will tell you exactly how they did it. And see if there is one small thing that you could make a change to copy what they did. Rip off and duplicate. All right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, people. Like, learn from others' success. That's leverage. That
Well,
truly is, that's knowledge leverage.
knowledge leverage. So if you do that and you go out, comment or let us know what is that tiny thing that you're making a change that's going to put you on the same path as that person who's doing what you want to be doing, because we would love to hear it and give you a shout out. And next time we're going to talk about money, specifically why making more money won't actually fix your business problems unless you fix your money problems first. That is a painful lesson that I am still in the process of learning.
Oh, and I remember we're always learning that. So listen, subscribe, share this with a friend who needs to hear it. DM us if you're ready to start shifting your mindset for bigger success. We are here to help those who want to help themselves. Until next time, have a great day.